Gennady Mikhasevich was born on the 7th of April, 1947th year in the village of East, now belonging to the Myorsky district of the Vitebsk region. As a child, Gennady was a reserved and uncommunicative guy, for which he was often ridiculed by girls. Because of this, Mikhasevich acquired a sexual complex. In addition, his father suffered from alcohol addiction. And young Gennady watched almost daily how his father arranged scandals for his mother, which often ended in physical abuse on the part of his father. Mikhasevich's friends knew about these cases and constantly mocked him. After school, Mikhasevich was drafted into the armed forces of the USSR and served in the Navy. But due to hepatitis, he was soon discharged, after which he returned to Belarus. Mikhasevich committed the first murder on the night of the 14th of May, 1971st year, near the village of Ekamen, Polotsk district. According to him, at that time, he was depressed about parting with his girlfriend and was looking for a secluded place to hang himself. Having accidentally met Lyudmila Androlova, a 19-year-old local resident, he changed his intentions. "Why would I choke on a woman? I'd rather strangle one myself." Mikhasevich attacked Androlova, raped her and strangled her with his hands. Lyudmila's body was discovered on the 16th of May. Initially, investigators assumed that she was the victim of a robbery. However, the inspector of the Criminal Investigation Department of the Vitebsk Regional Executive Committee, Boris Loparovich, put forward a version about the appearance of a sexual maniac in the Vitebsk region. The crime remained unsolved for more than a month, and Loparovich was withdrawn from his investigation. Subsequently, a certain Glushakov was found guilty of murdering Androlova. He was sentenced to 15 years in prison. Mikhail Zhavnerovich, an investigator on particularly important cases of the prosecutor's office of the Belarusian USSR, told Loparovich, "That's the way to work. It is necessary to be able to solve crimes." On the evening of October 29, 1971, on the outskirts of Vitebsk, Mikhasevich attacked another girl and tried to strangle her with a clothesline. The victim began to struggle, scream, and bit through the attacker's arm. At that moment, she was heard by schoolchildren who went to shout with a flashlight. Mikhasevich, realizing this, decided not to risk it, fled the scene of the crimes, and threw the weapon of the crime. The girl remained alive, and the evidence fell into the hands of the investigation. Rope with blood of the first group. However, on the same day, near the village of Ruba, he raped and killed another girl, whose corpse was found the next morning. The episode of the attempted murder of a girl on the outskirts of Vitebsk was not considered by investigators at all, and the garrote found at the crime scene was thrown away. The version that the attack was committed by the same criminal who killed Lyudmila Androlova and was convicted of murdering Androlova was innocent, was unprofitable to the investigation. Mikhasevich committed the third and fourth murders on April 15th and July 30th, 1972. In the area of the railway station on the outskirts in April 1973 year. In 1975, Mikhasevich killed 2 more women in the Polotsk district. A witness to the murder committed on the 30th of July of the 72nd year testified that she saw 3 young men with a shepherd dog near the crime scene. Soon 3 people were arrested in the suburbs of Vitebsk: Valery Kovalov, Nikolai Yanchenko, and Vladimir Pashkovich. Walking with a puppy of the shepherd breed, the only evidence was a photo of this puppy confrontation between Kovalov, Yanchenko, and Pashkovich, which was conducted by Mikhail Zhavnerovich. They were confused about the testimony. At the same time, Zhavnerovich threatened them with the death penalty if they did not confess to the murder. Under the pressure of the investigation, Kovalov and Yanchenko confessed, and Pashkovich resisted to the last. As a result, all 3 were found guilty of murder. Kovalov was sentenced to 15 years in prison, Pashkovich to 12 years, Yanchenko to 2.5 years in prison. Outwardly, Gennady Mikhasevich lived an ordinary life. In June 1973, he graduated from the Gorodok Technical School of Agricultural Mechanization, returned to the village, and began working as an auto mechanic at the state farm. On the 28th of April 1970, Shevich went to work as a repair foreman at the state farm of the wine of the Polotsk district. In May of the same year, he married a saleswoman and moved to the village of Sloniki. After that, Mikhasevich, from 1976 to 1978 years, killed 4 women. In the area between Polotsk and Novopolotsk, the killer raped 3 of the 4 victims. In 1979 and 1980, Mikhasevich killed one woman each. He committed the second of these murders in the same area between Polotsk and Novopolitsk, where he had previously committed 4 murders. In 1981st year, Mikhasevich purchased a passenger car Zaporozhets models as 968M red color, and also got access to a State Farm vehicle technical assistance. Since this year, the maniac has chosen a new tactic for committing murders. In various districts of the Vitebsk region, he began to lure his car to girls and women who were standing near the road, and asked for a ride. In 1981, Mikhasevich killed 3 women. In the summer of 1982, and in 1983, another one that became his 20th victim. In 1984, Mikhasevich killed 12 women. The maniac committed most of the crimes on the highways between Vitebsk, Polotsk, and Lepel. Gennady Mikhasevich had a reputation as a good worker, an exemplary family man, and an active participant in public life. He had 2 children. He had been a member of the CPSU since 1978. He was the commander of the People's Squad and the secretary of the grassroots party organization. Led a healthy lifestyle. A total of 14 innocent people were convicted of Mikhasevich's crimes. One of them, Nikolai Terenya, was sentenced to death and shot. The other one, Oleg Adamev, sentenced to 15 years in prison. The third is Vladimir Gorly. He became blind in prison. Law enforcement officers resorted to torturing the defendants, tampering with evidence. For example, photos of a woman allegedly killed by him were planted in Oleg Adamev's apartment. The ongoing killings caused dissatisfaction with the activities of law enforcement agencies and a drop in the level of confidence in them on the part of the population of the region. The crimes that occurred were overgrown with speculation and rumors. Women were afraid to go to work in the second and third shifts. The streets of many settlements of the region emptied after dark. In the current situation, the disclosure of the murders of a woman in the Vitebsk region was taken over by the Central Committee of the CPSU. More than 100 employees of all law enforcement agencies in the USSR and other republics of the USSR, including the Prosecutor General's Office and the KGB, were sent to the region. The Minister of Internal Affairs of the USSR, Viktor Piskarov, decided to strengthen the personnel of the Department of Internal Affairs of the Vitebsk Regional Executive Committee, the head of which on January 1985 was appointed Vyacheslav Grip, who headed the investigation of the murders of women in the region. Nikolai Ignatovich, an investigator for particularly important cases of the Prosecutor's Office of the Besser, having studied the cases of the murders of women in the region, assumed that all crimes were committed by one person, and achieved the unification of all cases into one. During the investigation, a version was expressed that the criminal drives a car, which was confirmed by the testimony of witnesses who saw how the future victims of the maniac got into a red Zaporozhets or a technical assistance car. Checks of car data and the type of drivers have begun in the region. Mikhasevich himself took part in these inspections as a people's vigilante. During 1984th, 1985th years along the way, 221 crimes were solved in the Vitebsk region, including 27 murders, 17 facts of intentional infliction of grievous bodily harm, 14 robberies and robberies, 93 thefts. 479 criminals have been arrested. 186 missing persons have been found. 7 units of unregistered firearms were seized, wishing to direct the investigation along the wrong path. Mikhasevich anonymously sent the acting editor-in-chief of the newspaper Vitebsk worker Romanovsky, on August 16, 1985 of the year, a letter on behalf of the mythical anti-Soviet organization, Patriots of Vitebsk. The letter was immediately handed over to the regional department of the KGB. Initially, it was not given serious importance. In the autumn of 1985, Mikhasevich killed 2 women. On the 5th of September, near the village of Gomzelevo, Polotsk district. October 27th, near the village of Pavlovichi, Vitebsk region. Raped and strangled the victim with her own headscarf. The maniac put a note with the words into the mouth of his last victim: "Death for treason. Death to the communists and their henchmen. Patriots of Vitebsk." Graphological examination showed that the letter to the editorial office of the newspaper Vitebsk Worker and the note found at the scene of the last murder were written by the same person. The inspection of almost the entire adult population of the region began. Graphologists from the KGB checked 556,000 handwriting. On November 25th, checking the drivers of the Red Cossacks, the district inspector of the Polotsk Police Department. Valery Veritenikov took a written explanation from Mikhasevich. As a result, the investigation was able to calculate the maniac by handwriting. On December 8th, it was decided to detain Mikhasevich. However, the operatives who arrived at his home in the evening did not find him on the spot. On the 9th of December, they found out at his work that he had taken a vacation and was going to fly away on vacation with his family. In the evening of the same day, the maniac was arrested at his brother-in-law's house in the village of Gennady, Polotsk district. He had packed things for the whole family, as well as for plane tickets to Odessa. During a search of Mikhasevich's house, some of the belongings of the women he killed were found. On the 11th of December, the criminal began to testify. During interrogations of investigative experiments, he spoke in detail about the circumstances of each crime. He pointed out the places where he hid the corpses and victims. In addition to the already known victims, the remains of 5 women were found in these places, who were missing in 1,980,980. The maniac confessed to 43 murders. According to the investigators who interrogated the maniac, Mikhasevich did not repent of what he had done. The criminal was clearly flattered by the attention to his person. He passionately recounted all the details of his crimes. He often laughed and made jokes about his victims and law enforcement officers. During one of the investigative experiments, when asked by the investigator, did he have sexual contact with the victim, Mikhasevich replied with a laugh that he did not remember, since it was much more interesting for him to strangle her. During one of the interrogations, the killer confessed that he had almost strangled his own wife twice. The first time during intimacy. The second time was during an argument. However, he managed to control himself by washing himself with cold water from the tap. According to the criminal, his wife was of little interest to him, and he practically did not communicate with her in everyday life, except that he helped with the housework. About the motives that pushed him to commit a crime, he replied as follows: "From time to time, when I was alone with myself, some kind of state came over me, which prompted me to look for a woman in order to first communicate with her, touch her body, try to perform sexual intercourse with her. When I came into contact with a woman, I was possessed by some kind of insanity, in which I crushed and killed women. I thought that a woman should definitely be crushed, and in such cases, I couldn't help myself. After the murder, I was relieved, and I did not regret what I had done." The investigation was conducted for more than a year. 227 witnesses were questioned. 60 types of physical evidence have been attached. The materials collected by the investigation fit into 173 volumes of the criminal case. It was possible to prove the involvement of Mikhasevich in 36 murders and 1 attempted murder. In the conclusion of the psychiatric examination conducted in it by the General Forensic Psychiatry named after Serbsky, it was said, "Mikhasevich does not suffer from a mental illness. He has psychopathic traits and a penchant for sexual perversions. These personality traits are accompanied by the presence of sexual perversions in the form of sadism. They are not accompanied by disorders of thinking, memory, emotionality, and criticism." During the period related to the acts incriminated to him, Mikhasevich had no signs of any painful disorder of mental activity. He could be aware of his actions and direct them. He should be considered sane. The trial of Gennady Mikhasevich took place in Minsk from April 14th to May 19th, 1987th year. The Judicial Board for Criminal Cases of the Supreme Court of the USSR, chaired by Judge Fyodor Savkin, sentenced him to death. In the last word at the trial, Mikhasevich did not repent of committing the murders. He refused to file a petition for clemency. The letter sent to the Supreme Court of the Besser to the mother of the maniac with a request for his pardon was left without satisfaction. The sentence was carried out on the 25th of September, 1987th, according to other sources. On the 19th of January, or the 3rd of February, 1988th, in the castle, 14 people were convicted of Mikhasevich's crime before his arrest. One of them, Nikolai Tereny, was executed, the other Vladimir Gorly, sentenced to 12 years in prison, served 6 years, and became blind, after which he was released as not posing a danger. 4 of them spent more than 10 years in prison. And now I ask supporters of the use of the death penalty to speak out. Are you ready that innocent people may suffer as a result of this? The main responsibility was assigned to the investigator for particularly important cases of the prosecutor's office in the USSR, Mikhail Kuzmich Zvinarovich, who leads most of the cases of innocent convicts. In addition to him, about 200 employees of the Ministry of Internal Affairs of the USSR were brought to justice after the capture of the maniac. One investigator, having learned about the charges against him, committed suicide. Only the zonal prosecutor of the Transport Prosecutor's Office of the Besser, Valery Soroka, bore real responsibility. Sentenced to 4 years in prison. Several other law enforcement officers received suspended sentences of imprisonment, firm to 2.5 years. The rest got off with only reprimands, demotions in ranks and positions, dismissals from law enforcement agencies, exclusion from the SIPSU. Zvinarovich himself, the main person involved in the criminal case of abuse of official powers, actually did not bear any responsibility. In November 1987th year, in connection with the amnesty on the occasion of the 70th anniversary of the October Revolution, the criminal case against Girovich was terminated, and he himself was retired, with the preservation of all ranks and awards. Shortly after retiring, Zvinarovich died. If you like this video, please like it and write a comment. Currently, this is the only possible non-material support for authors. Thank you all. See you soon.